Hey, it's Katie Moran, and here's a very special episode of Heartfelt Lift today. I'm here with
Julia Sylestri, and I'm here to talk about navigating life after grief.
this is such an important topic, and I'd love to just jump right in. Is there a specific amount of time that someone can grieve, or is there a right space or way, like a right way to grieve?
I would say no to both of those. When you lose somebody, especially, it really doesn't matter how close you were to them. But for me specifically, when I lost my dad when I was about to turn 22 years old, there's really no right way to grieve. And there's no right amount of time because when you lose somebody, you are always going to be grieving for the rest of your life. There's always going to be a part of you that's missing. So that's the grief aspect that
Mhm.
you'll experience for a long time after. And there's also no right way to grieve. There's people who will cry and cry for days and won't go to work for a while. But then there are people like me who went to work pretty much a week after my dad's funeral. And we can get into the reason why I did that.
Mhm.
Because, you know, grief just affects people differently. So there's no right way to grieve and there's no right amount of time to grieve.
Yeah, I'm interested in knowing, do you feel like grief is something that takes you away from your creative work, or is it something that plays a part in it?
I think a little bit of both. When I lost my dad, I was still in college, so I was about to turn 22. Um, I know it wasn't really creative. I wasn't super creative at the time because I was still in college, but I still had work. I still had classes to go to. I was on track for graduation. And it took me away from that for a little bit. I mentally was not able to focus on things. But then also part of me, because of my dad and the type of person he was, I knew that I had to kind of try to refocus and put myself into my work because I knew that's the work ethic he instilled in me and the work ethic he had. And I also know that's what he wanted for me. So it's a little bit of both. I was taken away because of the grief, but at the same time, it did light a little bit of a fire under me because now that he's not here, I need to do this more for him and because of him.
I'm interested, what would you say to a friend who recently lost, say, a parent or someone very close to them?
Um, my biggest advice is it doesn't get easier
Mhm.
thinking about that the fact that they're not here, but you do learn to create a new life and navigate a new life without them present. They are going to always be in your memory. And so living your day-to-day life, they will always be there, but it's going to be a new norm. It's going to feel like you're always missing a piece of you. Like my whole life could be peaches and cream. I could have everything that I want, but there's always still going to be a part of me that feels like it's not right because my dad's not here. So that's one thing to just be aware of, that you're never going to feel completely whole after losing a parent, a friend, or someone super close to you. So it's it's not something that you can fill. It's not a void you can fill. There's nobody that's gonna replace the parent that you lost. There's nobody who's gonna replace the friend that you lost or the sibling that you lost. It's always just gonna be a part of you that's missing. And I know when I lost my dad, a lot of people were like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. It's gonna get better." I'm like, it doesn't. It's
Mhm.
it's hard when people give you that advice when they haven't actually gone through it. Um, and so that's kind of what I learned from a friend of mine who lost their parent. They're like, it's like, I'm not gonna say, I am sorry for your loss, but, like, I'm not gonna say it gets easier because it doesn't. And that's just, like, the hard truth that people don't really talk about, especially to somebody who lost a loved one.
Yes, switching gears, what would you say to a friend who lost a parent or a loved one in the past and still feels the pain in a very vivid way?
Grief is people process grief very differently. So there are people who are still very much grieving today like they did the day they lost their loved one.
Mhm.
Um, and that's totally okay. There's nobody should tell you the right way to grieve. Nobody should tell you, "Oh, get over it. They're not in your life anymore. They're not here anymore." Because they are still in your life. They're just not physically present. Um, but I guess my advice would be see how you can work their memory and their legacy into your day-to-day life or something that you're passionate about, whether it be your career, um, something you're working on yourself, like whether it's a book or a podcast, anything like that, a blog, like
Mhm.
try to incorporate their legacy and their memory into their into your day-to-day life or your passion, because it'll feel like they're actually there. It'll feel like they're with you. Um, so I think that yeah, I think that would be the best way for me or the best advice I would give. It's hard because I lost my dad almost coming on 5 years ago, I think this year. Um, and I still feel like sometimes forget, it sounds weird. Sometimes I forget that he's not here anymore.
Mhm.
And but obviously I come back to reality and I realize, I tell myself he's not here anymore. But I try to incorporate him into my day-to-day life, just with how I act, how I respond to people, how I respond to things, my work ethic, things that I'm working on outside of my corporate job. Yeah, I would just try to carry on their memory in the best way you can.
I love that so much about honoring their legacy, and also the idea that when you honor someone's legacy, you continue a relationship with them.
Yeah. And I just got chills, like, as you said that, because it sounds so weird, and it's hard for people to understand that until they actually experience it, but, like, just how I react around people and how I behave around people, I'm like, I feel that's how my dad would be. That's how my dad acted, and that's the legacy that I vow to carry on for the rest of my life because unfortunately, he can't be here, but if someone can carry on his legacy or multiple people can carry on his legacy, that keeps his memory alive and it keeps that relationship you have with them, even though they're physically not here.
Tell me about the process of working on your upcoming book. What does it take, and how are you processing the grief through it?
So it actually took me a really long time to actually start the book first. And then I tried, I would write a couple chapters and then I would not work on it for months and months and months because I would get to the part where I talked about my dad and I
Mm,
was like, I would start sobbing. And I'm like, I don't even know if I can write this. And also another part of me is like, who wants to read a book from me? Like, I'm not some big successful person, but I also have I have a story that I want to tell, and everybody has a story.
mhm.
And we all have different perspectives when it comes to certain things that happen within life. Um, but honestly, ever since 2024 started, I was like, I need to write this book because I want to get my message across about grief and a lot of other things I've been through. And it's very honest. Um, and so as I talk about my dad in the book, I get down to the nitty-gritty of what I experienced when my dad was um dying because he was sick with cancer. So as I'm writing the book, yes, I'm crying, but I also feel the presence of my dad as I'm writing the book. And I'm like, okay, I'm pushing along, I'm pushing along. So this is the first time where I've gotten to actually I've written a lot of chapters so far already. And I can just feel the presence of my dad and kind of the push from my dad of like,
Mhm.
keep writing, keep writing. Like you have a story to tell, you have a very specific perspective on things. And I think that's something really valuable that people want to hear. And also something that I will write in the book is my dad has always said that I'm gonna make something of myself, never specified what, but I've always like taken that in and really kept it close to me. And that is also a reason why I do a lot of the things that I do because he had this vision for me and I'm trying to bring it to life. And again, that's the relationship that I keep with my dad. ever since he's passed away.
I love that so much. If there's one message that you want to leave everyone with today, what would that be?
Um, I guess my message would be learn to navigate a new life without them, but keep them in your memory as best as possible. You never want to lose that relationship with them because there are different situations where people, leave your life, but for me, my dad was left so abruptly, um, that I didn't have a chance to prepare for it really.
Mhm.
So I kind of had to pick up on my own and create this new life. And it doesn't get easier, but you become a lot stronger. Your tolerance to certain things becomes very low. So, you know, any arguments or anything that comes up in life, you're like, okay, that's really not that big of a deal because I've already experienced worse and I've already lost a parent. That's the worst thing I can experience. So like I'm not going to tolerate that. And yeah, you create this life where you let certain people into your life and you also say no to certain people. And I think that's a really strong thing to take from when you are going through grief. You are very, very vulnerable after you lose somebody. And you don't want to let just anybody in to take advantage of you. And you also don't want to just let anybody in to bring you down the wrong path. Because, it's a very, very scary life sometimes after losing somebody. So, yeah, just learning to navigate a new life without them, but keeping their memory alive is the best way to not necessarily move on, but to keep going in life because you'll never actually move on from losing them.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you.